My last theory video was me going over a few newer pieces of evidence regarding Stitchline games, and at the end of that video I mentioned that there are actually connections between Tales from the Pizzaplex and Fazbear Frights in ways that actually have nothing to do with Stitchline games. I started taking note of this stuff right around when Somnophobia came out, and I thought it would be a good topic to make a video about. So that's what we'll be talking about for today's video. I hope you all enjoy, and let's get started.
Make me a hero, someone to turn to and rely on their will to win. Make me a hero who puts up a fight both day and night. Oh.
In April last year, I was on the episode of the Dark Rooms podcast that discussed Tales from the Pizzaplex and our predictions and thoughts on it before Lally's game came out. We had the covers and descriptions for 3 of the books and the title for Frailty, but at the time that was all we had. So we talked about that stuff. However, I recently decided to rewatch the episode, and something Ozone said about Somnophobia actually caught my eye.
Mangle Plus and Chill.
No, not that.
Sam is something we've seen in Blackbird.
Oh my god. Must be the same one.
So I just came up with a really random theory.
Go ahead. Please tell us.
Tell us.
Okay, this is book number 3, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Somnophobia. Book number 3 in Fazbear Frights was 1:35 a.m. Would you agree that Delilah in 1:35 a.m. had somnophobia?
While this wasn't technically true, it does really make you wonder. Delilah didn't have somnophobia, but both Somnophobia and 1:35 a.m. have a plot entirely revolving around sleep. In Somnophobia, Sam uses the dream sphere, which puts you into a dreamlike state. Somnophobia itself is the fear of falling asleep and never waking up. In 1:35 a.m., Delilah is essentially the opposite. She actually loves sleep, but she never gets enough of it because she keeps getting woken up. In both stories, the main character is attributed with sleep, has a tragic backstory regarding losing parents, Sam losing his dad and Delilah being an orphan, really liking something related to sleep. For Sam it's the dream sphere, and for Delilah it's the Ella doll, which works as an alarm clock, and both characters end up dying. These two stories have connections with one another, and when I realized this, I began to think about other stories and what connections they could have had. I thought of 2 right off the bat, and eventually I found that there are only 2 stories that I can't associate, but that might even just be something I'm missing. It's not just that the stories parallel each other, it's specifically that the stories in each Tales book parallel the corresponding Fazbear Frights book. The stories in Lally's game all parallel the stories from Into the Pit. But before we get into specifics, let's go over the 2 obvious ones, Frailty and Haps. In Frailty, the main character Jessica is 14 years old, and she has a pendant that has seemingly miraculous healing powers. It's a version of the Remnant pendant from Fazbear Frights, the same type of pendant that Eleanor gave to the also roughly 14-year-old Sarah in To Be Beautiful. Oh yeah, and To Be Beautiful? In the story, Sarah literally asks Eleanor to make her beautiful. It's all that she wants, and Eleanor grants this wish. But did you notice that the same thing is what happened to Jessica in Frailty? Throughout the story, there are constant comments about how Jessica is beautiful, and at a point in the story, it said that there was actually a time in her life when all Jessica wanted was to be lovely. Jessica and Sarah are both 14 years of age, at least approximately for Sarah. But both of them also wanted to be beautiful, and then they were turned into a pile of scraps. Both even get with guys that they like only for their relationship to be ruined because of their current situation. Both are outsiders in their schools, and both end up getting popular near the end of the story before they are humiliated and an aspect of their secret is revealed. Then both at the end of the story collapse into a pile of trash. Frailty and To Be Beautiful run on very clear parallels, and I think this is probably the most clear of all of them. We're going to skip ahead to Haps for a second, as that one I think is a pretty clear parallel as well. Haps runs in parallel with Fetch. Fetch is a story about a 14-year-old kid going to an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's location, where he finds an animatronic, that being Fetch himself, who over time has become a bit withered and damaged. Fetch is an animatronic designed to help complete tasks, to help you. However, Fetch is possessed by Afton, Andrew, and Eleanor, and while he's still trying to help, he's doing so with very extreme methods, and he doesn't realize that he is doing more harm than good. At the end, he even kills the main character's friend, and he thinks he's being a good boy. Now let's look over at Haps. The main character is 15 and he goes into a walled off area of the Pizzaplex. Walled off, no lights, no entrance except by breaking things. Abandoned. There's an animatronic in this attraction called Haps, who is an animatronic designed to help you get out of the area if you're lost. It's designed to help you. But when he fell down there after getting kicked to he got really withered and damaged like Fetch. Because they were in this blocked off area, Haps believes that they are lost and wants to take them to the exit. But the problem is that underneath his foam hands were spear-like and sharp like claw things, making them into unintentional weapons when Haps lost his hands. He was still trying to help them, but unbeknownst to him, he was attacking them. Both Fetch and Haps have a damaged animatronic designed to help, trying to help the main character, but with extreme methods that they don't realize are causing harm, and in both stories, the main character's friend is killed at the end.
Book number 2 in Fazbear Frights was Fetch, right? Imagine if they have the same kind of premise where like both of them are trying to be helpful, but
Oh no.
ended up like killing people.
Somnophobia, Frailty, Haps, they all run in parallel with their Fazbear Frights counterparts. Frailty from Book 1 parallels To Be Beautiful in Book 1. Haps from Book 2 parallels Fetch from Book 2. Somnophobia from Book 3 parallels 1:35 AM from Book 3. But almost all of the other stories, while some not as egregious as others, run in parallel with their counterparts as well. So, let's talk about the rest. Lally's game connects to Count the Ways. How? Well, in Lally's game, we have a strange, dangerous item from Fazbear Entertainment that someone keeps with them for years. The person who owns this object has a relative who is the main character and is tormented by this object and eventually killed by it. Same happens in Count the Ways. Fazbear Frights had a constant theme of body snatching, swapping, or controlling in stories like To Be Beautiful, Lonely Freddy, Room for One More, Dance With Me, In the Flesh, He Told Me Everything, Gumdrop Angel, Sea Bonnie's Prankster, and Kids at Play. Yeah, there's a lot. But interestingly enough, Tales from the Pizzaplex has a similar trend that has appeared in all 4 books, but it's not body snatching. Tales from the Pizzaplex has an ongoing trend of fake or warped realities. The first of these appeared in the first Tales book, Under Construction. The Under Construction has a girl named Maya who goes into the currently under construction AR booth at the Pizzaplex. The AR booth is not accessible to guests, and she and her friends snuck in here unauthorized. She puts on the AR headset, it explodes, she dies, and her spirit gets trapped inside. The story takes place in the fake reality created by the AR headset. However, it just so happens that Tales from the Pizzaplex is not the first time that this concept has been explored. In Into the Pit, from the first book of Fazbear Frights, we have Oswald, who goes into the ball pit, which I should mention is off limits, just like the AR booth, and he goes inside and he's brought into the recreation of a memory of some other person. The ball pit and the AR booth both create fake realities based on the real world, but with some warped element. Moving on, I think we should now mention the 2 stories that I could not find a connection for, Help Wanted 2 Out of Stock, and Submechanophobia 2 Step Closer. There might be a connection, but I wasn't able to find it. Strangely though, not only does Help Wanted follow the fake reality trend, but Submechanophobia also actually runs in parallel with The Scoop of all stories, but I don't really know if that means anything. It's just something I observed. It could be that The Scoop was originally actually going to be a story in Fazbear Frights that was originally going to be in Book 4. If we assume that to be the case, then I wonder if in the future we'd be able to find where Felix the Shark and You're the Band were originally going to be placed. Anyway, that's just a side note. Let's move on. We've gone over all 3 stories from Ali's game, so let's talk about the last story in Book 2, B7. B7 has a little kid named Billy who, after watching Freddy and Friends cartoons, decides he wants to be an animatronic, but over time he begins to actually think that he is an animatronic. He lives his life thinking he's an animatronic from age 5 to age 21. When he's 5 years old, from his perspective, he becomes an animatronic. Looking over at Lonely Freddy, we have Alec, who switches bodies with a Lonely Freddy. The Lonely Freddy becomes human, but more importantly, the human becomes an animatronic. Moving on to Pressure, I think this connection is extremely obvious. It's the new kid. Both stories involve a springlock suit, a golden one to be exact. Both stories involve a character getting springlocked, and not only that, the new kid springlock incident takes place at an old abandoned Freddy's location and happened as a result of a basically fake friend. The Pressure Springlock incident took place in a location designed to look like an old Freddy's location, with the decoration making it into a Fazbear's Fright-esque one. It's also possible the location is actually the original one, which the Pizzaplex was also built over, based on the fact that it seemed a little too accurate and too realistic. However, it would be a little weird if the Pizzaplex was built over 2 different Freddy's locations, but it is a possibility. And also, of course, Luca in Pressure died because of his fake friends. Next up on the list is Cleithrophobia and its connection to Room for One More. Cleithrophobia takes place within tubes, similar to Haps, but the animatronic in those tubes is Ballora. It's a small space, kind of like vents, right? Well, looking over at Room for One More, the mini-arenas in that story are found inside the vents of Stanley's security office, and not only that, the mini-arenas are Ballora's little minions. Next connection to go over is Animatronic Apocalypse and its connection to Dance With Me. In a previous video, I talked about Ballora and what I think she is and how she connects to the previous FNaF story and stuff, and how I think she is still relevant today. Somehow that video did really well. That string of FNaF theories I made, from my Patient 46 one to my William Afton kind of video essay one, I expected the Afton video to do the best and the Ballora one to do the worst, but somehow the Afton one ended up doing the worst and Ballora one did the best. That really surprised me, but just because the Afton one did worst of those 5 doesn't mean it did badly. It actually did great. I'm actually really happy with how all those videos are doing, and because of it, I've been growing really rapidly recently, so thanks guys. However, regarding that Ballora video, one of the things I brought up was how Ballora in Dance With Me connects to Glitchtrap in that she gets closer every time you put on the glasses, like how Glitchtrap gets closer every time you collect a tape. And at the end, the little girl seems to get possessed like Glitchtrap does to us in FNaF VR. Some people don't think the girl did get possessed and was just dancing with Ballora for fun, but I feel like it's more likely that she did get possessed, as one second she was really excited, but then she kind of settles and just starts dancing. And the way it cuts off right there just seemed really suspicious. So yeah, I feel like Ballora did possess the girl. Glitchtrap, who Ballora here is connected to, brainwashes people and forces them to follow him. And in Animatronic Apocalypse, we have Principal Renner, who basically brainwashes the kids to follow him in what he's doing, which is essentially being insane. Also, just as a side note, Animatronic Apocalypse seemed heavily inspired by Bendy and the Ink Machine. Not only does Mr. Renner have an odd black liquid as blood and disappear without a trace like the dead characters in Bendy, but he literally wears a Freddy Fazbear mask and has a cult to Freddy Fazbear, like Sammy Lawrence wears a Bendy mask and worships Bendy. But anyway, that's besides the point. It's just something I wanted to bring up because it seems like it really was inspired by Bendy. And finally, we have Bobby Dots Part 1, where Abe is woken up in the middle of the night by something in his apartment, just like how in Coming Home, Susie and Samantha are constantly woken up by Chica at the door of their house. Neither Chica nor the Bobby Dots have malicious intentions, but the characters Abe and Samantha are clearly scared of them. And those are all the stories and their connections to each other. What I wonder is whether or not this trend of stories paralleling each other will continue in the future books. It's also interesting that even Tales from the Pizzaplex Epilogue 3 connects to the one from Fazbear Frights, both having an endoskeleton possessed by Afton as well as a dog animatronic, and that endoskeleton kills people. The other epilogues didn't seem to have any connections to the Fazbear Frights ones, but it's just something I noticed. So is all of this stuff. It's just something I noticed, and I feel like it has to mean something, but I don't know what. But I'm assuming that this trend will continue, and based on that and the information that we have from the description and the events of the stories in Bunny Call, do you guys have any predictions for the Bobby Dots conclusion? Let me know in the comments, and if you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys!